Oh, I said some things I shouldn't have said. It just slips out. I
Oh
hope you don't
no,
have to
they're
do
gonna
too much
find me
editing.
now. Welcome everyone to Starfield Signal, your place for everything Starfield. I am your host, Luke, and I'm really excited. So obviously you're seeing my face, and so you know this is going to be a different video. We're actually talking to a graphic artist about some really cool renderings he has made to talk about the space travel in Starfield. And so we're going to jump right into it. I have Krim on the line. He was the artist that made these graphics. Krim, thank you so much for joining the channel today and for hanging out and talking with us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump right into it. So, first, if you would, just kind of tell me a little bit about like what piqued your interest in Starfield. Are you a Bethesda fan for life, or just kind of stumbled across this and said, "Hey, this sounds like my vibe."
So I've been a Bethesda fan since I was a teenager. I got into it a little later than some people. A lot of
Sure.
my friends played Oblivion and Morrowind, but I
Hmm.
got into it with Skyrim, which I feel most people, it's
Yes.
one of their most popular games.
Absolutely.
So I've been playing them since Skyrim. All the DLC, Fallout, and I'm really excited for this new game.
Man, I am too. And I played Oblivion, and so I'm kind of back there, but it wasn't like, man, this is amazing. It was like this is the only game I enjoy on the Xbox 360, and so I played it.
Mhm.
But Skyrim, I mean, much for me, like you, was the thing that really kind of gave me the Bethesda bug, if you will. Well, so for Starfield, we're all excited about it, especially here on this channel, obviously. And one of the things we haven't seen a lot of yet, and that lots of people have questions about, is actually the space travel. And so you've created these graphics to kind of go through some different options that you think we have as far as how Bethesda have designed space travel. And if a lot of you who are watching are like me, I think I didn't even think about this. I just kind of made some assumptions that this is how it's going to be. But Krim did a great job of kind of breaking down, we haven't seen exactly what it's going to be, but these are some options. And so I'm going to kind of let you drive now, Krim. I'm going to pull up on the screen what the different graphics are that we have. And would you just kind of run through those and kind of break down the different ideas that you've had?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, you're right. The one thing that we really haven't covered, or Bethesda hasn't showed us at all, is the space travel. We know that we can't go from space to the surface. Some people aren't into
Right.
that. I think it's a smart decision based on how they
Hmm.
structure their worlds. If you ever played Skyrim and got like a flight mod and you flew over the landscape, watching things pop in, it's not a fun time. So I
Right.
understand them not letting us do like a seamless transition. Um, and if you go to the first graphic,
Okay.
there's basically four ways that you could structure space in video games. I mean, there's probably more, but these are the four that I came up with.
Sure.
So you've got what is this one? This is the disconnected and finite overworld. So
Okay.
you've got the planet surface, and then you've got the space around the planets, but you cannot physically in your ship, or
Mhm.
virtually in your ship, travel to those other planets just by flying there. You'll need to use a space or like a system map,
Right.
and there's a disconnect in the actual world space.
There
And
would
then
be
for the
some
second
sort of
graphic,
cutscene or some sort of break in the immersion
yes,
to, like, get
yes.
from, using our solar system as an example, to get from
Mhm.
Earth to Mars. We couldn't just even if we're in outer space, not in on the planet, but even if we're, like,
Yeah.
above the Earth's atmosphere, we still couldn't fly to Mars under this model.
Yes, we couldn't. And there also would be a hard limit to the space. So you would hit this hard limit. And that was just for this example. I don't think they would
Right.
actually do that.
Right, right.
In the second example, though,
Go over there. The
you will
connected
see,
plus finite space overworld.
yes. So this is what
Mhm.
No Man's Sky did in a well, actually, is this the, yeah, it's finite. So
Okay.
technically, No Man's Sky did, I believe, the fourth example, but this one, you would have the same system. but all the planets would be clustered. You'd see the star off in the distance, and you'd be able to travel to each of them, but the space would
Okay.
be limited.
Okay. So there would still be like you could fly from Earth to Mars, but there would still be a
Yes.
section that would be out of bounds, so to speak, or you'd get that little
Yes.
message pop up on your screen like you're exiting the
Yeah.
map. Please turn around.
And you couldn't like fly to the sun. A lot of people with No Man's Sky, when they
Right.
first were hearing about it, they were saying, "I'm gonna fly into the sun and burn up my shit." But you ended up not being able to
Just
do
to do
that
it.
because it's a skybox. Yeah.
Right,
Sadly,
right.
I wanted to be one of those.
Kamikaze. The disconnected plus infinite space overworld.
Yes. So this one, I think this is the most likely. This is just my personal opinion.
Okay.
This would replicate real world scenarios. You would be in space and you'd start flying to Mars, and it would be disconnected, and it would be a pseudo infinite space, and you'd never get to Mars because you were going 200 miles per
Oh,
hour, and Mars is millions of miles away. I think it's is it like 120 million miles away on
I'll
it
take
on
your word for
average.
it.
So so you'd need to still use the map. You would not be able to get to other planets just by flying to them. It would be disconnected. But since it's infinite, like a pseudo infinite around each planet, it
Mhm.
gives you the feel of what happens in real life. It would take
Okay.
months. So you would just go to your
Right.
map and go to the next planet to save the hassle.
Right, right. I gotcha. So, like, in maybe an equation or an equivalent, excuse me, might be like if you were, in Skyrim, you wanted to travel from, Riften all the way up to Solitude, but it was literally, you know, a million miles in between. Like you
Yes.
could do it, eventually, but it's not at all practical.
It would be like Solstheim. You would be swimming in the ocean forever. At a certain point, you're just going to use your map.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
assuming if you could get there, but they wouldn't design it so you could. And the next
Hmm.
example, though, would be as if everything was connected and infinite. That would be
Okay.
like you're swimming to Solstheim. You can get there. It's going to take a while, but this would be the most difficult one to do because we already know Todd said that there's orbital mechanics. Like he phrased
Right.
it like you can see the planets going around in space, you can see everything
Hmm.
happening, rotating, but you would,
Right.
with this system where everything is actually open, connected, infinite, you would have the full solar system. So you would have to actually do those orbital mechanics. And I think the third
Okay.
example is more likely.
Okay. Gotcha. So in this one, you're having to kind of navigate through, Mars has its own orbit, Mercury has its own orbit, Earth
Yes.
has its own orbit. And that means, like you said, they're going to be different distances apart at different times of the year. Um, but you
But they would
think,
all still be in the world space,
right,
same world space.
so you could still get to them. And so do you think within this model, the connected plus infinite space overworld, that they would they would still allow you somehow to fly through the space and get to the other planets and just kind of
Oh yeah,
mess with the calculations and the distances to make it feel
that.
like you're getting there
That's a good
quicker?
point. That's a good point. That I thank you for bringing that up. There are drawbacks to this. You would not be able to do real world distances, and it
Right.
probably would feel like not constricted. It would be more open, but the scale wouldn't be realistic to the point where it's definitely noticeable. I would prefer them to mess with the system a bit, um, and do the previous example rather than have completely unrealistic scales. Because Todd was talking about having the planets be essentially infinite space. Not that they are infinite, like the surface, but as
Hmm.
long as you have a large enough playground that it feels infinite. In a
Right.
scenario like this, I feel like it would not feel right.
Huh.
You would
Okay.
be going around and you'd be able to see the other planets, and it wouldn't give that NASA punk. Not that they're going for hard realism, but it just
Right.
wouldn't give the correct feeling. that I'm getting from what they're doing with their game so
Okay,
far.
gotcha. Because when I was looking at everything, and it may be better to comment on it more whenever we've gone through all the different models, but I was kind of thinking this would be the one that I would prefer, where I could fly my ship from planet to planet to planet within the same system. But then when it came to
Mhm.
going to other systems, just pulling up the map and fast traveling because it's light years away.
Oh,
But
yes.
I
With
didn't
all
think
of these
about
examples, oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I didn't think about what you had mentioned about the systems and the orbits and the rotations and everything kind of being connected within the timing of everything, and that would be tricky to pull off.
You would have to simulate a whole solar system in such a way that it's not unbelievable. You
Right.
could do it.
It would be significantly smaller,
Yeah. You wouldn't have an
obviously.
asteroid belt.
Right.
There'd be so many things that would take me out of it immersion wise. And similar
Mhm.
to how they got rid of like or didn't implement seamless space to surface transitions with like the ship, I think they would take the same uh not drawback. They would take the same what's that word? Risks? No, like concessions,
Okay.
like
Yeah, yeah.
for if as long as it works in the game, like gameplay wise, and it doesn't take the player out of it, and it's a good enough system, I think it would work better to have things like let you just travel to the next planet via the map
Right.
because it's so far away. That works with in-game logic and real-world logic.
Sure.
Um,
And maybe even
you
still
know,
giving you the option to fast travel, like to
yes,
New Atlantis if you wanted to, but you could also fly
mhm.
there if you, I mean, just like in Skyrim, if you wanted to
Yeah.
ride
In
your
this
horse
in this
or if you
example,
wanted
you'd
to
be able
do
to just
whatever,
fly
you
there.
could still. Right. Okay. Let's take a look at the next one. So this one I had a harder time figuring out. So explain this to us. Break this
Oh,
down.
this is where it gets weird. So
Okay.
some people pointed
Perfect.
out when I made the post originally on Reddit, some people pointed out, okay, but wait, what about gas giants and their moons? They're almost like little mini solar systems in their own right. So why would you
Sure.
not have all of those bodies, celestial bodies, interacting with each other? So in this system, it's just like the last one, or
Hmm.
it's just like the first example, but this is example 1B, basically. So you would
Okay.
have your normal planets on the right, and then you would
Hmm.
have your gas giants on the left. And within those gas giants, you could travel to any of the moons as if it was like a free space. But when
Right.
going to other planets, you would not be able to. You would have to use the map just like the first example.
Hmm. Gotcha. So this again is kind of accounting for the physics of it, right? The simulation,
Yeah.
the orbits. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Because in my first example, I hadn't even considered moons around planets. So
Right.
just that's another part of the orbital mechanics you would have to take into consideration if you had it be like an infinite and open connected world space.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds too complicated to me. Maybe they could pull it off. I'm not trying to discredit Bethesda, but it
Sure.
would just be easier to do certain methods.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. There's one more, two more.
Yeah, and that
So
would just
this.
be exact same thing, but you can travel to the other planets. This would be
Okay.
like No Man's Sky, where the planets would be clustered and you would see the sun way off in the distance.
So you're still saying that we could not just go fly into the sun or somewhere that wasn't meant for us to land on. We're still kind of in bounds, so to speak.
It would be more restricted for sure.
Right.
The sun, I would assume if you're clustering the planets and having them in a finite space, you'd have the sun off as a skybox, like in the skybox. That'd be
Hmm.
easier. You could have the sun next to them. I'm not sure how that would look though, because that would just be
Hmm.
like you're making an entire solar system, which would be
Right.
like the next two examples.
Gotcha. Let's go there now. So the disconnected plus infinite space
Yes.
overworld.
So this infinite pseudo space, you could fly in any direction. You'd never go anywhere. It would seem infinite at least
Right.
in terms of the game. But when it comes to gas giants and normal planets with their moons, those would be their own little mini systems. So you could fly
Gotcha.
anywhere within the gas giants area. You could go to each of the moon
Hmm.
individually. I don't know if they would let us go to gas giants themselves, though. They could honestly just be something that's a cosmetic in the sky because we don't know if we can go
Okay.
to them yet.
Similar to what maybe the sun would be in the skybox.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Which one? So this was our last one. Which one of these does Elite Dangerous use?
Elite, I haven't played it personally,
Okay.
but if you can you do you have to
Uh,
use a map to get to each
you
system, to each planet?
well, you fly everywhere. There is no fast travel, but
Okay.
you can like choose to jump, but it's like I don't think I've ever flown from
Is
planet
it
to planet. It's been so long since I've played it like seriously. But but you could fly to a system and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm about to crash into the sun." And so I don't think
hmm,
anything is in a skybox, so to speak, but it does kind of feel like that. Hey, if I were just to fly at like normal spaceship speed, whatever that is, I don't know if I would eventually. I mean, it would take years, maybe even 100 years to get to where you were going if you didn't use their like jump mechanics. Um,
so
okay,
since I haven't played it, I'm assuming that it would be as if every solar system, every planet, every star is within the same world space.
hmm,
So that would be, I think, this last example. Yeah.
yes,
So everything is infinite, but I think Elite Dangerous goes a step further because I'm not even considering solar systems like and traveling between them. That
gotcha.
we already know that we use a galaxy map for that. I'm
Right.
assuming just within the solar system that it would be pseudo and infinite. And then once you're trying to get to another solar system, you'd use the map. So
Okay.
this is all just talking about the planets themselves.
Thinking about what Todd had mentioned, and I think he was famous for mentioning this in the Lex Friedman interview about where they took away the fuel, right? So they didn't want players just to get, excuse me, they took away the fuel mechanic, so you weren't just flying in space and then you'd get stranded because you ran out of fuel. And so with that in mind, and how it seems like they've solved for that to where, okay, if you want to go to a system and you don't have enough fuel, then you just don't go. Taking that into account, which one of these models do you think is maybe most likely?
So taking the fuel into account, see, I don't know if they fully removed the fuel requirement because I think it's it's now limiting how far you can jump between systems.
Right.
So there's still somewhat of a fuel mechanic. I think they're going to add in true like fuel mechanics back into like survival mode.
Sure.
But
Sure.
if we take that into account, I would say the third option in each of these two groups of four would be the most likely because
Okay.
it simulates real world distances because everything is far away, so far away that you have to fast travel.
Right.
Um,
So
I
disconnected
I
but
don't know.
infinite.
It's all speculation, so it's a bit hard to say.
Right. Yeah. But it's fun speculation.
It's
It,
definitely fun.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but watch us in a few months, 6 months, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. And if
Right.
we're right or wrong on one of these, it could be neither of these. We don't know.
Sure. Sure. I think if I there's a lot to think about with the whole simulation part of it, right? If I wasn't thinking about simulation and the orbits and the sun setting and the timing of all that and having to be just right, just as far as like a fun factor, just straight
Yeah.
gameplay, I think I would prefer like I can fly around anywhere in the solar system. I can fly to Earth, Mars, Venus, wherever. But then when it comes to going to a different system, okay, I have to fast travel there because
Yes.
just why would I not? Because there wouldn't be anything on the journey really to make it interesting. You wouldn't get. I don't know. Maybe they would make it to where like,
You
hey,
could
if
actually.
you want to head 10 minutes this way, and maybe one of those radiant quests pop up where some pirates intercept you or something, and I don't know. Maybe some cool stuff like that would happen. But that's kind of in my mind what I would like to see. What about you? So we talked about what you think will probably happen, just as far as like strict fun gameplay. What you think would be cool? Which one of these options do you think would lean into that?
ideally, I would lean into the fourth option, which would just be infinite, open, connected. You can go anywhere in the solar system, go to any
Right.
planet you want. They would have to have the scale be proper for me, though.
Because
And
that adds to your
then you would
fun
need a
level.
way to get to the planets quicker, which at that point, you just get a loading screen anyways.
Right, right.
Because in No
Do you
Man's Sky, when you do your jump, your warp or whatever between
Mhm.
planets, it's basically a pseudo loading screen that takes 2 to 3 minutes.
Right. And that brings up another point that's a bit outside of this of the scope of these images and the beautiful work you've done. Um,
Thank you,
but
by the way.
we've seen absolutely. We saw again, in this most recent little teaser they gave us right before their launch announcement, all these rings rotating around these structures. Lots of people are thinking these rings are creating some sort of wormhole where we're warping to another system or another location, maybe even another time. There's lots of speculation out there. Um, that could be another form of travel, through the world, the universe of Starfield that we're not considering. And so that it's interesting to think how that might affect things as well.
Now, that's interesting that you mentioned that because if Bethesda really wanted to get some wacky worlds in there
Yeah.
from different galaxies, not even the Milky Way, fully different galaxies, maybe
Hmm.
Andromeda, they could do a wormhole system where it could transport us to some other area. And then we find out, oh, I'm in the Magellantic Cloud or something, and I'm
Right.
so far off. And that would be a nightmare to me if I couldn't get back.
Right. Because
That's my worst nightmare.
you just spent $2 million on your first ship, and now you're in a
Yeah.
completely different system. Yeah, that
Well,
poses some problems.
with the wormhole, it almost looks like we would just be going on foot, which sounds you get properly stranded on a
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
If they really wanted to, they could do a system like that where you find these temples from these ancient aliens, you
Right.
go through the portal, and it's like this unique planetary dungeon where you can't leave on your ship. I'd love that. That would, as long
Oh,
as if they make it truly
if it was
alien,
like
that would be
yeah,
very
yeah.
interesting.
If it wasn't like, hey, this is just taking you to another part of our map, but this is taking
Yeah,
you into like an instance dungeon. Oh, I hadn't even
almost
considered
like
that.
the Forgotten Vale, totally separate from our
Cool.
area normally.
Yes. 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 Ooh, that's cool. I like that.
I know. I love I love because they could do anything they want. Anything with
Right.
dungeons, they could transport us to a different universe and they could
Hmm.
explain it away. They could do whatever they want as long
Right.
as it makes sense in universe and
Like it's
it makes
consistent.
sense to
Right.
design it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Love it, man. Um, well, gosh, you've already blown my mind, and I think I've followed along with you pretty. Is there anything else we haven't hit on or touched on that you want to go back to or follow up on?
I mean, just a summary. It's just whether or not whether or not the planets will be clustered and
Hmm.
the sun's going to be in a skybox, or if we'll have actual orbits.
Right.
Um, I'm leaning to actual orbits, but then they'll have this little system right here that you just pulled up, where it's
Right here.
disconnected and you can just use your map to travel. Because it
Right.
also lets you separate out like the space around each planet. Like maybe
Hmm.
the space around Neon is super dangerous versus the space around New Atlantis's planet. What was the name? Jemison.
Jemison. Yep.
Um, So you could have a safer area around that. And just in terms of game
Hmm.
design, it would be easier to just say, okay, this space, we know it's around this planet. Boom. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
snap your finger, now we have pirates over there
And
versus
and they've
having it all be
mentioned
one space. Yeah.
right, and they've mentioned that the different systems will have like levels as far as like difficulty
Yes.
levels, right? And so that makes sense what you just said that in a given system there could be a lot more pirate or alien activity, perchance. And yeah, and I would imagine somewhere like the United Colonies, where Jemison is, and it's more what you
Mhm.
might call tame or civilized. That would be a bit more of a safe bet as far as traveling around. Very interesting.
It almost gives me like a police state vibe, though, the UC, the United Colonies, It's almost like
Yeah.
if you do go there, you're going to get shaken down by the city guard near Riften instead of
Yeah.
pirates. Like I'm not trusting them yet. Personally, I might go with the pirates because just principle, because I freedom and all that, you know.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So you sound like a Frida, or what's it called?
I'm not a sovereign citizen or whatever that's.
the other
No.
faction. Oh shoot, what's it called? The not
Oh,
UC, but Freedom,
Universum, Sanctum.
Freedom.
There's some
No, it's like the
religions.
Freedom Alliance or
Oh,
something.
Free Star Collective.
Free Star Collective. Yeah, you sound like a Free
Yes.
Star Collective kind of guy.
I I'm gonna try them all out and see what happens. I'm really excited for it,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. What you were mentioning about all that, I definitely have plans to make some lore videos, and I wanted to tease out a little bit of that tension because, right, it's been what in game it's been 30 years since the Colony Wars,
Yeah.
and so there's obviously still tension going on there between the Free Star Collective and the United Colonies, but what caused that? It's usually about ideas, right? And about, and freedom is a big idea when it comes to wars and, and liberty and safety. Yeah, that's very cool to kind of hit on there. Well, man, Krim, thank you so much for coming on the channel, for going through these, for making these amazing graphics. You're very talented, you're very skilled.
Thank you.
I think we're all going to enjoy these, and hopefully you'll keep creating things. And so be sure to check in with the channel from time to time as you create more things. And we have a lot of creators that have connected with the channel that are making great things like this. And so I'll kind of put out this call to action if you are a creator, and whether you are, whether you're coding a program, whether you are making beautiful graphics like this, whether you're making other videos, connect with the channel. Feel free to email me at starfieldsignal@gmail.com, and we'll get you featured on here. And I'm very excited about the game moving forward. So, Krim, any last words? Any last thoughts?
No, that was a perfect outro.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching Starfield Signal and this kind of breakdown of the space travel possibilities. We will see you in the next video. For now, may you find wonder as you journey through the stars.